This is a wonderful discussion we have in store for you all. And I just want to thank Reverend Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition to have a gathering of young Black African Americans to even discuss some things on tonight. You're going to hear some wonderful things. So get your notepad, get your pen, get your phone out, share this with someone. Let somebody know that we're on right now, the Millennial Perspective. I'm Tyrone Grant. We have some phenomenal young people who are going to speak on tonight. You're going to hear from them and gather some information. Before we go into the discussion, I do want to pray. And so let us pray. God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this opportunity that we have. God, we do pray that someone be informed, that someone would gain the knowledge that they need. In your name we pray, in Jesus' name, amen. As I mentioned, my name is Tyrone Grant, but I do want to open the floor for our guests to introduce themselves. And so starting with Nia Dumas to Christina Williams, Reverend Tyrone, and then Kylie Smith, and then finally Reverend Cameron. They're going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to allow you to hear from Reverend Jackson. Thank you, Nia.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Nia Dumas, and I am a junior political science major at Spelman College, and I currently serve as the Student Government Association Director of Leadership and Civic Engagement.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I am Christina Williams, and I'm a junior political science major at Clark Atlanta University, where I serve as an at-large representative in the House of Delegates, as well as a Democracy Fellow with Campus Vote Project.
Good evening, everyone. Reverend Tyrone Mcgowan from Chicago, Illinois, graduate of Morehouse College, Yale Divinity School, former National Field Director, Rainbow Push, currently on staff as Associate Pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ, and Pastor of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Providence, Illinois.
Hello, my name is Kylie Smith. I am a graduating senior at Spelman College, originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and I currently serve as the Spelman College Vice President.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cameron Barnes, and of course, I am the National Youth Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and of course, I'm just glad to be here. Thank you to Elder Tavell.
Awesome. We're getting ready to hear from someone who has literally changed many of our lives, and I want you all to just have your listening ears on, and let's give it up for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Elder. I'm delighted to be with you guys tonight. Just for a moment, so many things are going on. I can't stay with you very long tonight, but you're big on the line. The Zoom excites me very much. When young America comes alive, you make things happen. Wars, you die for the country, and you can live for the country. You can make America better. You make the world more secure. In some sense, Dr. King is lying tonight on Auburn Avenue. The Spirit hovers over us like a great cloud of witnesses. He sits high and looks low. We have an opportunity now to make something happen. While the Republicans fight among themselves about why they should not vote, we're fighting why we should vote. By the way, two things I want to say to you before I leave. One, if you're 18 to be 18 by January the 5th, you can register to vote by December 7th, number one. Number two, if you are at Clark Atlanta, you at Spelman, wherever you may be, if you're from New York or you're from Chicago, you vote where you live, residence. You have the right to vote where you live. The right to, if you every student you know is Spelman, because the mail at Spelman or Morehouse or Clark or Savannah State, you can vote where you live, residency. Don't forget that. The last point is that when you do go vote, sometimes grandparents are slow to go to vote because of conditioning. When I was running for president, my grandmother was not going to vote for me. She loved me so much. She not going to vote for me because she couldn't read and write. And she was Jesse Jackson's grandmother. You know, she was in a situation. She was not going to go out in time making X and embarrass herself. So, Mama, you have to choose dignity over foolish pride, Grandma. But take her downtown and register to vote. Let me say, any of your grandparents, friends, and neighbors, the guys in the corner, you have the right to go in the booth with them. You have the right to go in the booth, whoever's voting. Whenever I go, I always take someone with me. I have who I'm going to vote for. I have my ticket in hand, and then I go for it. So thank Cameron, you, Elder, for your work in the Rainbow Push Coalition. We're going to have a massive youth movement. We're going to have something to celebrate January the 5th. I want to thank you very much, and God bless you, and keep up alive and talk that talk I have a one-string guitar playing one song, Georgia on my mind.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, we have to continue to keep the push going. And today we're going to continue to move forward, following in some huge footsteps of Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. And so I do want to get into the discussion tonight. I want to go first. I'm asking a question to Nia, and this question is tailored to you. After looking at some of the things you've done, we know that you're pushing for voting rights. And so from my understanding, we've noticed that in the state of Georgia, women such as Stacey Abrams and other Black African-American women have been fighting strongly for there to be a right for people to vote and for people to be registered. And so my question to you is, what do you think is the impact of African-American women and many others who have fought to ensure people are registered to vote in Georgia?
Okay, I think that their impact has been instrumental when it comes to galvanizing people to head to the polls, to submit their absentee ballot, and just to make sure that they're registered to vote. And I think ultimately the work of Stacey Abrams and other Black women, especially in Georgia, has helped elect the current president-elect Joe Biden. And it's no secret that Black women have been consistent, reliable, and powerful voting blocs for several decades. And so when you look at Black women, they are usually, the backgrounds or the backbones of households. And so if you can move a Black woman to vote, you can move a whole household. And so I think it's also important to discuss a little bit about Stacey Abrams, because she's also the founder of her organization, Verify Action, which has spent countless hours and days making sure that people are registered to vote and ready for the presidential election. And so they've done phone banking, text banking, canvassing, just doing everything in their power to make sure that people are not only educated on voter suppression and making sure that they can vote, but making sure the biggest challenge is getting out to vote. And so Verify Action, as you can tell, in 2018, they've been tremendously successful with having people get out and register to vote, because since 2018, over 800,000 people in Georgia have registered to vote. That's a tremendous amount of people. And 45% of those new voters are under the age of 30, and 49% of the other voters are people of color. And so with the help of Stacey Abrams and other Black women, they have helped turn Georgia blue for the first time ever, and that's historic. So their help has definitely brought about change within Georgia.
I'm sorry, Elder Grant. I'm sorry, because I wanted to hone in a little bit on some of those statistics that Nia gave, that she can kind of tell us again that number. 800,000 registered in Georgia since 2016. How many of them are under the age of 30?
There's 45 new voters under the age of 30, and 49% were people of color.
45% of that 800,000 are under 30. And if my math is correct, 50% is about 400,000, take off 500%. 5%, that's well into six figures, the number of people under 30 being registered to vote as a result of Stacey Abrams and her contribution. I think that is something, and 49% of them being of color, which is, of course, again, almost 400,000 people. I think that's something that we should all have had that written down and everything, because that's something I didn't know. I'm grateful for those numbers, Nia.
Thank you. I think it's amazing that we see the contrast when we look at a Senator Kelly who was appointed in 2019, someone who has stated that they're pro-wall, pro-Trump, but then we look at someone like a Stacey Abrams who is literally fighting, as we would say, in the trenches. She's doing what needs to be done. And so we're thankful for her work. I want to move along. My question now is for Reverend Tyrone. And this question is geared towards faith in politics. And I believe that you have an understanding, just through what you've been able to accomplish in your life, the impact of your faith being involved in what you do politically. So my question is, how does the faith of Reverend Raphael Warnock set him apart as a candidate in this runoff?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Elder, and great to be with you all tonight. And I think it's such an interesting question, because you kind of alluded to it with Stacey Abrams and Kelly Loeffler. can also say the same for Kelly Loeffler, Raphael Warnock. They couldn't be more diametrically opposed, to each other. As Reverend Jackson would say, we live by our faith, but we live under the law, meaning that our faith informs the way we live. Our faith informs the way we see ourselves in the world, our place in the world. Our faith informs our values in many ways. Our faith informs our decisions, be they political decisions, economic decisions, social decisions. Our faith informs all of that. And when we talk about faith in politics, when we talk about politics, we're not reducing it to just its partisan definition, but politics at its most earnest sense is concerned with resources, the distribution of resources, freedom, institutions, access, mobility. Our faith should say something about all of those entities and our engagement and our approach to them. Warnock's faith is rooted in the Black religious tradition, the Black religious faith tradition, the social gospel, the Black liberation gospel. He was mentored by the preeminent father of Black liberation theology, Dr. James Cone at Union, where he got his PhD. And now he's the pastor of Dr. King's church. So he is the embodiment of the Black religious tradition. And that is what's on the ballot. So he's fighting, he's bringing those values of Dr. King, those values of our ancestors who spoke truth to power, Fannie Lou Hamer, John Lewis, C.T. Vivian. He's bringing all of that is on the ballot. And it's so interesting that this is taking place in the South, the home of Dr. King and so many others. And it's Atlanta that's leading this wave and creating the new South and turning the South blue as it should have been the whole time.
I want to ask you one more question, Reverend, before we move on. In our last discussion, and Cameron can even speak to this, we brought up the impact of the church on the election.
Yep.
We brought in the lack of support from white evangelical churches pertaining to many issues that you would think that they would speak up on. And so my question to you would be, what's happening, do you feel, in Georgia, perhaps, where churches are assisting in this runoff? Are churches gathering buses to send people to polling places? What are they doing?
Yeah, I think with COVID, it is definitely curtailed some of the efforts of churches. Usually we would have, souls to the polls, on Sundays, driving people to the polling places. COVID has kind of shifted that. The churches are still doing, what we're doing now, Zoom calls, prayer calls for Dr. Warnock, fundraising that way. So we're still, trying to find creative ways to do that. I believe Otis Moss III, Jamal Bryant, E. Dewey Smith are kind of the co-chairs of his campaign. So he's still deeply rooted in the faith tradition, and the faith tradition has a stake in this particular race. But also you mentioned the evangelical versus the kind of Black religious tradition. I think it goes to the core of, who, again, what do you value? Who do you value? What Bible are you reading? The Black religious tradition is rooted in Luke chapter 4, the mission statement of Jesus. I came to preach good news to the poor, those who are made poor, right? That word poor in the Greek means that somebody came and made you poor. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be poor, but there are some economic, political forces that are strategically making people poor. The policies that Kelly Loeffler promotes are policies that make people poor. Then proclaim release to the captives. That means police, that means criminal justice reform, the new Jim Crow, recovery of the sight to the blind, healthcare reform. Kelly Loeffler wants to take away your healthcare. Mitch McConnell wants to take it away. Raphael Warnock wants to expand Medicaid and expand Medicare in Georgia and across the South. And so that's what's at stake in this election. And I'm inspired by Reverend Warnock's campaign. And it's a debate Sunday night. I hope we all watch it and are inspired as well to take the Senate back, because it's within our reach.
Absolutely. It's within our reach. And I've spoken with Reverend Barnes about what is in our reach. We've had some calls. We've talked about the impact of having Black Americans within the Senate. We talked about Cory Booker, and we've talked about these things. And so I want to ask this question to you. When looking at Black America, if Reverend Warnock is elected, how does that impact not only Georgia, but Black African Americans?
Well, Elder Grant, I mean, with the election of Vice President Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, she'll be leaving her California Senate seat. And when she leaves, she will be leaving Cory Booker out of New Jersey by himself, if you will, as the only Black in the Senate. You have Senator Tim Scott out of South Carolina. I do want to mention his name because he is a Black man. However, he's shown that his agenda is not for us. So I don't count him when it comes down to it. But the impact that we're going to have, representation matters. Representation matters very much so. And so, first of all, it's long overdue for us to have our fair share of Black senators in the Senate, because the Senate is so powerful. It's much more powerful than the House. It confirms many of the appointments of the president and things like that. That the Senate has some really heavy power, and so we must be represented in the Senate. So if Reverend Warnock, were privileged enough to be able to be elected into the Senate, what it does for Georgia is it lets Georgians know that we can decide an election. We can decide that we want to put someone in a position that is going to look out for us. And if we get behind them, then we can put them in that position. There are 1.9, according to my research, 1.9 million people in Georgia under the age of 34, between the ages rather of 20 and 34, 1.9, almost 2 million Georgians, 20 to 34 years old. Those votes can swing that election. And what that will say to Georgia is that when you want something, what that will say to all of Black America, not just Georgia, when we want something, if we used our power, Reverend Jackson will say all the time that the vote is the key to the political kingdom. That's what he'll say all the time. If the Black people took their votes and unlocked the doors of this political kingdom, there is nothing we would not be able to do. We could have the proper health care. We could have the proper funding in HBCUs. We can have the proper funding in elementary schools, high schools, grade schools that are all in the communities. We can have the same thing that our Caucasian counterparts have, that we are denied, not because we don't deserve it, not because we didn't work for it, but because we're viewed as inferior. And then we don't show up to the polls and use our voice, which is the key to the political kingdom. Many of our problems are coming on the back end of an unjust justice system and an unjust government. Did you know that lock can be busted with your vote? You can put someone in office. You can send someone to the state legislature. You can send someone to the White House if you want to. Biden only won 31 counties in Georgia. Georgia has 159 counties. He only won 31, won the whole state, won the counties in Augusta, Atlanta, Savannah, Athens, Macon, Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, all heavily Black areas, all where we stay in Georgia. That simply means that it was our vote, solely our vote, the Black vote, that decided what Georgia was going to do. And so if we get that in our mind and understand that we can flip anything, there's nothing we wouldn't be able to do politically.
I'm glad that you're sharing that there's nothing that, once we put our mind towards something, we can do it. I want to make this point because as young people, we can stand for things. We can stand in line, if I could be honest, to get into the strip club. We can stand in lines to get the new.
You talking?
We can stand in line at Popeyes to get the new sandwich. We know how to take a stand. And so my question now is for Christina: how do we get those who are not registered to think enough to stand in line to vote? What are we saying to them to say, you know what, it's worth it to go to get registered and then stand in line for however long you have to push that button so that your vote will be counted?
Yeah, I think the conversation really should start by thinking about what's important to you. And not only yourself, but what's important to the people that you care about. What are the issues in your community? And what can you do to change it? And if you sit there and you think about it, and you make a list, and you come up with all these different ways, ask yourself, what is the most consistent, most effective way, most direct way to make that change? And more often than not, it's going to come down to voting. And, I think that for non-voters, a lot of times the conversation, they kind of leave the conversation when you frame voting in a way as the be-all, end-all. But I really like to think about it as a toolbox for change. You know, if you have protesting, if you have setting the public agenda, if you have voting, you don't do one of those things and nothing else. You have to do it all together. You can't protest and not vote. You can't believe that Black Lives Matter and not vote. You know, so you have to back up your actions with every tool in the toolbox. And then specifically in this election, we don't put enough emphasis on offices outside of the presidency as a whole. So we have to really think about, there are 3 branches of government. There isn't just one. And all 3 are responsible for how laws impact our lives. So when we really think about, again, what Congress is responsible for, that really impacts how we can even hold these elected officials accountable, specifically this race. So I would just try to frame the conversation that way and keep that in mind.
Awesome. I think it's important that we continue to use our voices to educate those who are our peers, whether it be on social media or just a conversation where we may text somebody, FaceTime them, so that they understand what is at stake.
Elder Grant.
Yes, sir.
Forgive me again for interjecting, but Christina said something that I thought was extremely important, and that was the fact of you can't protest and not vote. Like you said, when we talk about our social medias and we're talking about everything that we're doing on Twitter and we're doing on Instagram, I said this in a Zoom that I was in not too long ago with the Transformative Justice Coalition, that you may be having the right message. What you're saying may be correct, but ain't nobody checking your social media. No one's going to my personal Facebook to say, well, what does Cameron think? What does Cameron want to do? The government is not going to do that. They have to respond to your vote. And so if you're going to say Black Lives Matter, if you're going to protest, if we're going to demonstrate, we're on the back end of George Floyd unrest, Breonna Taylor unrest, unjustly taken, those lives unjustly taken. We went out there and we demonstrated. And then what happened, Georgia, is we then showed up, we backed it up with our vote and flipped a whole state blue that has not been blue in almost 3 decades. You cannot, thank you, Christina, you cannot say Black Lives Matter and don't vote. You cannot say that I'm going to protest, I'm going to demonstrate, and then not vote. I don't want to, well, we're a Christian-based organization. We know that the Bible says faith without work is dead. To go out there and protest is the faith that things will get better. But the vote is the work that we put behind that to make sure that my protest was not in vain. So all of you all that are listening, I'm gonna give it back to Elder Grant, but all of you all the young people that are listening, if you went out and you protested, if you believe that Black Lives Matter, if you believe that something is not going correctly in our country, say something about it on social media. Use your platform, but at the same time, do not neglect your vote. Your vote is much more powerful than your tweet, your Instagram post, your Snapchat. Your vote outweighs all of that. So thank you, Christina, for letting us know that. I'm sorry, Elder Grant.
It's fine. It's wonderful that you mentioned that, because one of the closest things, one of the better things that we can do to get the change that we need is voting. And so we can talk about it all we want to, but we got to be about it. If we want things to happen, we've got to do what it takes, and that's really voting. And so my question is, because as you mentioned, it was young African-American voters in Georgia who helped to flip the state blue. So my question, Tyler, is what do you think is the impact of schools in Atlanta, such as a Spelman or Morehouse or many others, that they've made an impact on these young Black voters to now go and say, you know what, we're going to vote again in this Senate runoff?
I know the first moment within the first couple of days I got to Spelman, we always host an annual voter registration drive, and then make sure that we're registered to vote, whether it's in Georgia or in our home state. And also with Turbo Vote, which is also Nia's job, they work diligently with the college students as well to keep us updated on local elections. So we get text reminders, but also we have very politically active organizations on campus, whether it ranges from Ignite, Fair Fight U, the college chapter, Young Dems of America, National Action Network. They all work very diligently, every semester, making sure to get out into the West End, just not on our college campuses, but also in other areas with young people and Black voters as well. So honestly, it's really the work of, it's a lot of the work of the people who are strongly politically active on these college campuses who are really putting in the work, whether it's voter registration drives, meeting people where they're at, whether it's at Walmart, or even Ignite. We had a partnership with a makeup store called Glossier, where we registered people to vote while they were buying makeup. So it's meeting people where they are at.
So I guess my question would be, because after hearing what you're sharing, it's meeting people where they're at. What are some things that really lead to getting young people to the polls? What are some great tools that if we were to have someone who is not a millennial, but is looking to figure out, how do I get my son, how do I get my daughter to go vote? What's that conversation? Is there a lesson? What is it that you do to get them there? And this is an open question for anyone who has a strategy in mind that you think would help, young people who, necessarily do not think about voting. How do we get them there?
So, I can answer real quick. So I forgot a very important organization, the NAACP. So to really get people out there to vote is to remind them that the personal is political. NAACP, I know the Selma College chapter, they actually had a canvassing workshop where how can you reach your audience by getting them to vote? So if they're a single mother, like, hi, I see that you have a child. How would you feel about if X, Y, and Z bill is passed, and how would that affect you and your family? Being updated on these policies, but also meeting them where they are at, like I said before, but also reminding them, like, how can voting on a simple amendment or voting a certain person in office could basically change their whole life.
Awesome. Anyone else would like to give some thoughts on that?
Yeah, just to kind of add on to what Skylar mentioned, I think the biggest thing is just to listen. And to listen to understand, and not necessarily to respond or push your own agenda or your own beliefs, but really listen to understand the perspective and the experiences of young people right now. We've all seen that we are going through a lot. Our issues may be different from the issues of other generations. There are a lot of things that affect us in different ways that may not be as apparent to a lot of other generations. And I think another thing is to just check your assumptions, specifically the assumptions that young people are apathetic, that we're misinformed, and that we just frankly don't care. I think that if you come into a conversation with those assumptions already, we know it and we feel it, and it makes us less responsive. So I think just really be open-minded, come in to really understand, and like Skylar said, connect that back to voting.
I'd also like, excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead, Nia, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would like to add that I think it's also important that we are educated on what's at stake, what's going on, and people's platforms. So I know, like at Spelman, and this is just an easy thing to do, just have a discussion, just talk to college students and just see where their head is at, like Skylar and Christina were saying, meet them where they're at, but also just be on the same level playing field of like, okay, we understand that this is this person's platform and this is someone else's platform. And personally, I think I might be more leaning towards this person. Okay, that's no problem. Now let's go ahead and head to the polls, and let's go ahead and enact change and see the things that we were discussing change. Let's go ahead and just see something that we'd like to see a difference in. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're educated. And like Christina was saying, a lot of college students, we are educated. We know what's going on. And that's why our voting block is increasing, because we see these issues and we like to just enact some change. And I think also having discussions, that's one of the easiest ways to talk about what's going on. You could pull a friend to the side and now you're having a political discussion and now you're both involved. And so I think to stay involved, you need to get involved. And so you need to have a commitment. You need to be committed. You know, the more, if you're out here phone banking or text banking and you're out here canvassing, the more you're involved, the more you'll feel that you need to get out and vote. And so I think the more that you're committed to the issue, the more, or the likelier, the higher chance you'll have to go out and vote.
I want to ask this question, and you know, the reality is, you know, I didn't have a chance to attend an HBCU. I attended Indiana State University, and so for me, the experience was different. It was predominantly Caucasian, and so my question to you all is, what impact does that experience have on someone understanding the needs of their people? And so when we have an opportunity like this to turn up and show out that we actually know what's going on, we have a chance to really come out and vote like we know what's happening, what's affecting us. What does that experience have for a young person so that they can be informed?
Yeah, I think, you know, the HBCU experience is life-changing. It's a life-changing experience, and it's something that sticks with you forever. And you learn almost more outside the classroom than you do inside the classroom. You learn in the classroom as well by wonderful professors, but it's just conversations on the yard, on Brown Street, you know, at Market Friday, at Spelman. You know, those conversations, those experiences inform you. And there's so much diversity. A lot of people say, well, HBCUs are not diverse. HBCUs are some of the most diverse places. We're diverse economically. We're diverse geographically. We have people from all over the world that are HBCU students. We're diverse politically. We have some conservative brothers and sisters that attend HBCU. So there's a lot in that, and that informs the exchange that happens. And so that whole kind of 4-year, or maybe more for some people, but that 4-year plus experience, you cannot enter and leave the same way you came in. You will leave a different person, and you enter. You leave well prepared to take on the world and well informed about all these issues that we're talking about. And you leave a responsible citizen ready to go out and vote and make informed decisions that will change the world and impact the world and make it a better place.
Awesome. Cameron, I want to ask you this question. How can we look at iconic figures like John Lewis and Reverend Jackson as a picture, as an image to inspire us to then go vote? How can we look at that?
Man, I don't know if we got that kind of time, man. We can, I mean, when I think of John Lewis, in the fact that John Lewis was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge marching for us to get the right to vote, to get the Voting Rights Act of 1965, if I'm not mistaken. He said he thought he would die out there. They had hit him over the head. He was bleeding and bloody and everything. He thought he would die out there, yet and still he continued. Why? Because he wanted, even if I don't get the right to vote, my people is coming behind me. And so Reverend Jackson and the folk like John Lewis and Dr. King and all of these martyrs, with the exception of Reverend Jackson, who have died in this fight. Some of them never seen the fruition of what they were fighting for. Dr. King never seen a Black legislator in Atlanta, never seen a Black mayor of Atlanta, never seen a Black legislator of Georgia. That's what he was fighting for. And they had a drive that said, if I don't get it, my children will. One thing that Dr. King says all the time, and said in his speech that we hear all the time, is I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they are not judged by the color of their skin, or by the content of their character. He didn't say I have a dream that one day it'll be a nation where I will not be judged by the color of my skin, but by the content of my character. In some way, it was prophetic that he knew that he was fighting a fight much bigger than him, that I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land. You know, things like that, where they have been in the fight when they said, I'm going to fight and I'm going to continue, not just for myself, but because somebody has to come after me. And so I think we can look at them in that inspiration by saying, we're the ones that came after them. We're the next generation. So Dr. King died fighting for you, Elder Grant, Christina, Skylar, Reverend McGowan, Neil. Reverend Jackson is still fighting for you, for me. We've come after them, and we owe it to them who died, who struggled, who bled, who hurted, who cried, who struggled, who prayed that we could have a better today. We are doing a disservice to them when we say, I don't want to vote. I'm not going to vote. I ain't even going to get too far into that because I could talk for a long time on that subject. What they did, the drive and inspiration they had is unmatched. We owe it to them. We owe it.
The reality is, oftentimes we, as young people, we forget sometimes who came before us and the privilege that we have to be where we are because of them. And so if there's a young person watching, I want you to understand that the liberties that we have is because somebody decided to make sure that we had it. And so that's right. That's enough of a reason for you to get out there and vote. It's because someone decided that I was going to put my life on the line to ensure that you had this opportunity to be a part of change, not just be a part of the protest, not just be a part of the march, but actually be a part of what causes change in your community, in your country, in your state. You can actually be a part of it. And so we're going to be closing soon, but I want to afford this opportunity to each of you all just for about a minute or so to share something that you think will be impactful for the listener, a take-home message, if you will, that you think they need to hear from you, starting with Nia to Christina, Reverend Tyrone, Skylar, Cameron, if you all can just share with someone a take-home message.
And Elder Grant, before we start that, Nia, I apologize. Be sure to add in your brief synopsis, and I'm just giving you a little bit more time to think of it too, your elevator speech. But be sure in your brief synopsis that you don't just give us the opinion. All of our opinions are great and they are useful, but you must give some marching orders to the young people that are watching. We don't have too much longer. December the 7th is the deadline to register in Georgia. December the 14th, early voting starts. January the 5th is the runoff election. We don't have a whole lot of time to keep throwing our opinions around. So as you think about your take-home message, what can you tell someone else that's going to inspire them to vote, that's going to inspire them to get registered, that's going to inspire them in Georgia, wherever they are? What can you say that can yield a feasible, tangible result in this day and age? Nia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think my take-home message would be, let's keep this momentum going. Let's keep going out there and doing what we did in the last election, and let's make sure we do that for the Senate. And just to provide a little bit more context, in the Senate, the 2 seats that are open will determine the balance of power in the United States Senate. That is huge. If both candidates from the Democrat side end up winning their positions, that ends up creating a 50-50 split in the Senate. And then that split would have to be those ties would have to be broken by the Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. So the more we go out there, the more we register to vote in Georgia and we cast our ballots, we can now see some change. We're so close. We're 2 seats away. I'm still very nonpartisan, but we're 2 seats away. And if people go out there and they vote for who they would like, you can see some change and some representation. And I think that's time. So that's my call to action. Let's get out there. Let's make sure we're registering to vote. As you said, the deadline is December 7th, and let's see change.
Yeah, I would just say that if you care about your community, if you care about the people you love, if you care about Black lives, if you care about yourself, this is the time to show it. This is the biggest time that you can show that. And I really want to say it's not about or, it's about and. I want to stress that again. It's not protesting or voting. It's not social media or voting. It's all that and voting. You want to be able to say that I did everything possible to try to change these situations. Even if you don't feel like your vote matters, even if you don't feel like it's going to count, it's not going to hurt you to try. So I'll leave it at that. Please register to vote. Please turn out to vote.
Yeah, I guess I have couple of points I want to rattle off real quick. One, I really want to highlight this, that Kelly Loeffler is the unelected senator from Georgia. That she has never, this is her first time facing the voters. She was appointed to this seat, which was vacated by Senator Johnny Isakson, who I interned for, full disclosure, when I was at Morehouse, a great gentleman. He retired from the Senate. She was appointed by the Republican governor, Governor Kemp. But if Stacey Abrams had won in 2018, she would have appointed a Democratic governor. So we see how important elections are and how elections have consequences. So just imagine if a Democrat was already holding that seat, that would be one less vote Mitch McConnell has. There will be one less vote for Amy Coney Barrett, who was just confirmed to the Supreme Court. So every vote matters. Every vote is critical. Also, I just want to highlight that we must vote because our futures are at stake as young adults. This next administration will have profound impact. The Congress, this next presidential administration, will have profound impact on our futures, whether it relates to student loan debt, having a post-COVID recovery agenda. It's going to take us more than 4 years to get out of this crisis. And so the policies that are implemented in this next term will be crucial to our futures if we're going to be able to buy a house, if we're going to be able to get married right away. So all those things are at stake in this election. And as it was echoed already, don't let this this past cycle be the last time you voted. We must vote every time the polls are open. So many people sacrificed, gave their lives, their blood, their sweat, their tears, and we must continue that fight. We must continue that pursuit towards justice.
My last words are, we're already on it, but use social media. Even though that the general election is over with, that does not mean that voting is done with, period. So every single time you should log on your feed, you should see reminders about voting for the Georgia election. If you don't see it, make sure you post it. Make sure you text your friends and family to remind them to vote. So yes, like everything is in the power of your hands. Just spread the vote. Spread the knowledge, and please remind people to go out and vote.
I guess my final words would be, I want to make an appeal specifically to Georgia. And I want to appeal to those almost 2 million 20 to 34-year-olds that are in Georgia right now. You all have power like you've never seen before. And as Reverend McGowan even said, if the election had went a different way before, we wouldn't even be in this predicament that we're in even now. And so we have to realize the impact on tomorrow that the vote makes today. And so when we vote today, we change tomorrow. And so if you have hope in tomorrow, if you have hope for the future, you cannot have hope that the future is going to get better and not do anything about it today. The future depends on today. And so I want to appeal to those almost 2 million voters. You have to vote. You must vote. Register to vote. This is not the time for anybody to go to the polls alone. You got to go with any and everybody in your network that is eligible. And I want to give some numbers. The last thing I want to do, let me take race out of this and say in Georgia, the voter turnout of voters aged 18 to 29, of the 8% of voters that are white, aged 18 to 29, 44% of them showed up and voted. Of the 3% of voters in Georgia that are black, aged 18 to 29, 89% of them showed up to vote. Of the 4% of voters that are Latino in Georgia that are aged 18 to 29, 69% of them showed up to vote. 18 to 29, 18 to 35, whatever it is. This millennial group, this young people group, the power is, I can't stress it enough, the power is sitting in your hands. It's sitting in our hands. We must vote. Vote your hopes. Vote your dreams is in this election. Kelly Loeffler, Senator Perdue, I'm not going to badmouth and get into anything about anybody, but we know who has our best interests. These folks do not have constantly shown, and we've given them chance after chance, constantly shown that they will not have our best interests at heart. And so if you want a better tomorrow, if you believe that Black Lives Matter, if you believe that this protest and this unrest that we just came off of in the summer was not in vain, you have to put your action behind your words. Your vote is the most powerful thing you have in your possession as a citizen of the United States of America. Use your power.
Awesome. I want to add to that, and then we're going to get off of here. And I'm thankful for everyone who has shared, and thankful for those who have watched. But it's been said that talk is cheap, vote is free. Well, I want to add this: voting pays off. And so, although voting is free, it pays off. And as you mentioned, we're doing this for tomorrow. We're doing this for what's going to come in the years to come, in the days to come, so that we can look ahead and be able to look ahead with a clear eye view that something better is on the way. And so you're pushing that button, just like you tap on your phone, you type on your computer. That's all it is when you go there. Just push the button and make something happen that can bring change, not only to you, but to your community as well. Thank you all for being on. Thank you, Reverend Jesse Jackson and Rainbow Push, for this awesome opportunity. Those of you who are watching, if you have not already, please share. Share with someone. Put someone's name in the comment. Mention them in the comments so that they can come and watch this. If they're millennial, they need to hear the millennial.
Absolutely.
They need to partner with us. Cameron, can you share how we can partner with young adults at Rainbow Push?
Certainly, and thank you, Elder Grant, because I got so fired up. I'm not even doing what I'm supposed to do. It's a good thing Reverend Jackson wasn't on here. He got on me. But no, go to pushexcel.org. That's pushexcel.org. pushexcel.org. Go to rainbowpush.org. We certainly want you to take out a membership in Rainbow Push and join us in this movement. It's only $15 for students, $15 a year, $35 for all of those who are not students and who are not elders. We need you to be in this fight. We're having these conversations each and every week. And when this Georgia election is over, we'll be having a conversation about something else that pertains to the millennials. So you need to join us. We need you in this movement. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. That's PUSH. PUSH to 41444, and all of the information will follow that. We need you, we need you, we need you, young people. As Elder Grant said, share this with somebody. If you are on here and you've got a grandchild, you've got a son, a daughter, you've got a godson, you've got a goddaughter, you got a niece, a nephew, tell them you need to get involved with PUSH with these young people, because we are on a movement that's going to change this country. Mark our words. We want you to be with us. Please join us.
All right, that's all, folks. Thank you once again to our phenomenal guests. I gathered some new information. I'm walking away better than I came in this session with you all. So I'm thankful. Once again, be on the lookout for some new things. God bless everyone and have a wonderful night. Thank you.